absolute destruction. This is the fate of many who come in contact with forbidden knowledge. Now, not every form of forbidden knowledge is this bad. No, sometimes forbidden knowledge is a lot more tame. Or at least, it would seem so on the surface. There are two games that I've played recently that I want to focus on because they have incredible examples of forbidden knowledge. Those being Deltarune, the game that most of you are familiar with, and Apocalyptic Drifter, the game that was shown at the very beginning of this video. These games are both fantastic, having something either in the past, present, or future that, like Icarus flying too close to the sun, have gotten or will get the characters in the world burned because of it. And before we get too into the depths of the video, welcome to Epoch, your place for everything indie game related, and let's talk about why forbidden knowledge in games is incredible. Forbidden knowledge is fairly common in media, Pandora's box being one of the more famous examples and one that will be relevant for this video. And Deltarune is no stranger to this idea. Deltarune is a simple game with a pretty complex story. You go through dark worlds to seal these dark fountains to keep the world from being destroyed. However, on a deeper layer, you'll begin to uncover things such as a complex character dynamic between you, the player, and Chris, the character you control. Chris absolutely hates you, the player. It's clearly put throughout the entire game, with Chris even hitting you with a hockey stick in this closet. Looking deeper into the game, you will find things that weren't explicitly stated, and you'll also be able to find secrets, some of which are better left unknown. And one thing that is pretty interesting is the existence of December holiday. In Deltarune, there's a family that was close friends with Chris's family, that being the holidays, and the oldest child in the holiday family is December, being a rebellious punk that was always causing mischief. That was until she disappeared. It isn't clear how she actually disappeared, at least not when only looking at the game. However, in the game files, there's a certain dialogue set that has appeared in every single release of a chapter, a voice of a lost girl. Along with these, there's a singular instance of this voice in-game when talking to Spamton in his shop, leading him to use dialogue nearly identical to the style of the text in the code, and afterwards claiming that he didn't hear a voice, but whoever it was sounded like they were talking to you. This is incredibly eerie, as this is the first real time that it feels like the game is breaking the fourth wall, talking not to Chris, not to any of the party members, but directly to you. However, this is a very mild example of forbidden knowledge. At most, you'll probably be a little freaked out by this encounter, but there's no lasting impact from this interaction. But there is something that's a whole lot more sinister that relates to Spamton in the Queen's Mansion. Pandora Palace is the name of the track that plays well inside Queen's Mansion, and this name is very telling of the mansion's nature. See, although it just seems like an ordinary final area for the chapter, this mansion has a secret, something hidden that nobody is supposed to find. And the name Pandora Palace makes a lot more sense when you think of Pandora's box. This is the story of a box that was given by the Greek gods that's not meant to be opened. However, driven by curiosity, Pandora opens the box, unleashing great evils upon the world. In an attempt to stop this, Pandora closed the box, though in the process there was only one thing left behind, that being hope. This story mirrors Deltarune in so many different ways, not only the fact that the entire palace is keeping several evils inside, but also the fact that hope remains is rather curious, as in chapter 4 it stated that Susie holds hope, letting her defy fate, but I've already made a video about that, so we won't go too much into depth about that here. Regardless, having Pandora Palace as the name of the track seems to imply that there are evils held here, and lo and behold, at least one of these evils has to do with Spamton. Spamton's past is a rocky one, littered with several strange mysteries. However, it's made clear that he fell far from where he once was. Throughout chapter 2, Spamton makes several attempts to get back the things he lost, and one such attempt is by getting the thing in the palace's basement. By talking to Spamton and unlocking the basement area, then taking the disc he gives you and uploading it to this machine, Spamton will gain a Neo form. Neo basically just meaning new, and then he will attack Chris, trying to get to what he refers to as heaven. There's another story in Greek mythology that has a large parallel to Spamton about a man named Icarus. Icarus was locked away in a tower along with his father Daedalus. However, being an expert craftsman, Daedalus created wings for Icarus to fly with, allowing them to escape. Icarus was warned not to fly too close to the sun as the wax holding the wings together would melt. Unfortunately, Icarus is a terrible listener, causing causing him and Daedalus to fall onto the sea below. Spammed Neo's design has very prominent wings, despite not using them to fly, and there are several very clear references in his dialogue and designs to Icarus, which is super intriguing. Both of the clear references to Greek mythology are in correlation to the idea of forbidden knowledge in some way. Pandora's being very obvious, but also Icarus's want to fly higher and higher. Spammed him directly mirrors this, as he wants to gain power all so that he can reach heaven. However, just like Icarus, his wings are burned, this time quite literally, his Neo form being shut down at the end of the boss fight and him returning to his salesman look. And this in and of itself could have been enough to justify making this video. However, of course, there is another example of forbidden knowledge in the form of the Weird Root. Anyone who's watched a Deltarune Theory video knows about the Weird Root, the creepypasta inside the completely ordinary game of Deltarune. However, there's something notable about this root that pertains to the things I've talked about so far. Noel Holiday. She's a really strange character, not only referencing things in the real world, but also quite literally being the key to the Weird Root as seen in Chapter 3's Secret Boards. In Chapter 2, Noel is the one kept securely inside Queen's palace, the Pandora Palace, and Queen is intent on keeping Noel there because she knows how powerful she really is. Through our curiosity, we learn that Noel is able to freeze enemies, and if, like Icarus, we decide to fly closer and closer to the sun, we can freeze every enemy and purchase the Thorn Ring. Then, by freezing Birdly, the Weird Root will have been locked in. However, things will no longer be in our control. When entering the Queen's mansion, instead of hearing Pandora's palace, we will instead be greeted by a slow version of Spamton's theme, which although seemingly means nothing, could likely represent the fact that the Pandora's box has been opened. The box no longer containing those things, but rather that everything has been unleashed. This change of atmosphere makes this part of Deltarune feel so empty. The characters that used to be here are absent, the halls are barren and lifeless, the acid tunnel isn't even operational, and this contributes to the eerie feeling. However, that eerie feeling perfectly fits the lifelessness that Toby Fox is trying to convey throughout this section. All of these things that I've talked about contribute massively to Deltarune's odd secrets being as incredible as they are, and there are also things in chapters 3 and 4 that add more fuel to the fire and could show what will happen in chapter 5, but first I want to talk about another game that has a great example of things better left unknown. That being the world of Hyperlight Drifter is a post-apocalyptic wasteland that at first really doesn't give an explanation for what happened. Sure, the very beginning of the game shows a giant explosion and the entire area being affected drastically. However, there's nothing that tells us how that happened, which is made more difficult because this game has no dialogue, at all. Throughout the game, you will play as the Drifter, a character who is afflicted by an illness, a disease that we learn is associated with a character named Judgment. As we gather these cells throughout the map, we see several glimpses of Judgment, along with a jackal that looks similar to Anubis, the Egyptian god that guides souls through the underworld, preparing them for judgment. Throughout the game, we catch more glimpses of these characters, the jackal guiding us to the places we need to go, and Judgment kills us several times. Anyways, continuing onward, we start to realize that these cells that we keep collecting are opening up a pathway for us in the center of the map, and along with that realize that the civilization that existed before this was extremely advanced. There are complex networks of technology far beyond what any of the citizens in the current time have. There are biological experiments being conducted in the south, teleportation and magic in the north, powerful warriors along with crystals in the west, and in the east, there's Hyperlight. Individually, these regions didn't have anything that special. However, in the center of the land was a city in which all of them contributed ideas, leading to the development of the cells. These cells are meant to draw upon a power that allows energy to be produced, and along with this, the people decided to work on a project called the Immortal Cell. This Immortal Cell, as the name implied, was meant to grant immortality to the people living on the land. However, when it was completely finished, things went slightly wrong. The cell, although theoretically being able to help the people of the land, was corrupted, turning into the entity known as Judgment, and before the people realized what was happening, the Immortal Cell had exploded, not only ruining the lives of everyone nearby, but also having devastating consequences all over. Pandora's box was opened, and the people inside the world had paid the price. So, Deltarune's weirder. In chapters 3 and 4, we see the game call it the Forbidden Path, having Noelle used up, us used up, and Susie and Ralsei meet a terrible fate. And after all that comes the house scene with Noelle, in which Ominous Worst plays. It's clear that our actions here are not leading towards a good path. Unlike the Pandora or the people in Hyperlight Drifter, we have clear signs what we are doing is going to lead down a path of destruction. Even the game within the game tells us exactly what we should expect when we go down this path. So if that's the case, why do so many players, myself included, feel such a curiosity about what will happen next? Well, that's what makes the game so incredible. It can draw us in through intrigue while pushing us away in dialogue. It keeps us on the edge of our seats while at the same time telling us to put down the controller. Just like the people in Hyperlight Drifter, we seek the appeal of something else, even though what we already have is perfectly fine the way it is. And despite some games doing it in different ways, that is why forbidden knowledge in games is incredible. With the last little bit of this video, I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about the future of my YouTube channel. First off, my main goal for this channel until the end of the year is to reach 10,000 subscribers, since not only would that be an awesome milestone that I'll probably do a huge event for, like a video or something, but also because it would massively help my videos reach new people just like you guys watching this video. Speaking of the videos, my upload schedule is going to be kinda strange for the next few weeks. Instead of the normal weekly uploads, I'm gonna get a video out once every 2 weeks until the start of November. It's mainly just because I don't have as much time as I'd like to make these videos, but after the start of November, that should be able to change back. And lastly, and most importantly, I'm going to start making videos more like this. If you want to see those, then subscribing would drastically increase the odds of that happening. With that, I would like to thank the Apoc channel members, and I hope I'll see you all in the next one.